Okay, so hello all together. Thank you, Adela, for announcing me. Actually, as you said, I used to be the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of the Economy of Luxembourg for the last 8 years, and in February I decided to leave government in order to go back to business, and so I launched my own consulting company in order to help companies with their problems. Actually, how did Luxembourg get to the space business, to new space activities? Well, when I got minister some 8 years ago, we already developed quite a large diversification strategy for our country, mainly in domains like ICT, eco technologies, health technologies. Automotive was an important one, logistics, etc. But you know, when I was talking to my fellow colleagues at European Union level, I quickly found out that actually everybody's doing the same. Every country wanted to develop these kind of activities. So, I was thinking that we should try to find something new, something where we could be first movers, at least in Europe, and have the advantage to develop a completely new business, completely new economic sector from scratch in Luxembourg. And that was actually the time when I was happy enough to meet a guy called Dr. Pete Worden, who at that time was the Director General of NASA Ames, and he wanted to see me in my office, and he was talking about me about doing business in space, about all kind of opportunities you might have in space, and also about space mining, stuff like that. And when he explained me this, I actually thought two things. First of all, what did the guy smoke before he came to your office, and second, how do I get him out of here again? But he stayed, and actually he convinced me to get more into the details and to try to learn more about this new sector, and that was also the time when he invited me to join them in the US, in California, in order to meet interesting people in new space businesses, in startups, etc. And I also thought, why shouldn't that not be a good idea for Luxembourg, especially as we have already a long history in space. I remember you that in the 1980s, the government, together with private investors, launched a satellite company called SES, Société Européenne des Satellites, which at that time was something completely crazy as well, because people did not really understand why it needs these communication satellites, why it needs sat TV, etc. When you read the discussions we had in Parliament, members of Parliament said that nobody needs satellite TV because we have our antennas on our roofs, and that's enough. We have 4, 5, 6 TV programs, and that's fine. So it was quite difficult to convince the population that this is a good idea, especially as at that time, when SES launched its first satellite, there was no insurance company in the world who wanted to give an insurance on this launch. And so the government decided to give a state guarantee. We had to pass a law for that because the guarantee amounted to a total of 5% of our total annual budget. So you can imagine that was crazy discussions in Parliament at that time, but we did it, and with the result that SES is one of the biggest players nowadays, and Luxembourg as a shareholder has always had a good return of that company. So that was actually the starting point of our fundamental analysis about how to know how to develop such a new economic sector called new space. And one of the things I learned when I was discussing with these actors in the United States is that they told me that for many of them it's difficult to find venture capital because it's not quite clear if you are allowed to commercialize space. If you are allowed to possess what you find in space, to use it to commercialize it, because the only law actually which exists, or international law which exists on space, is the space treaty, the UN space treaty of 1967. But of course, at that time, nobody was thinking about doing business in space, and using minerals in space, etc. So we thought that that would be a bold move, to launch such a law, to have such a law, which makes sure under which conditions you can do business in space. So you need authorization from government, and on the other hand side, which gives you as an investor the security that whatever you try to or you want to commercialize in space, that this is allowed with the Luxembourg law. So that was a first move we did, and I think at that time we were the second country to have such a law after the United States. And then, of course, research and development is an extremely important issue. So we launched a dedicated research and development program in order to help these startups to finance their research in order to attract them actually to Luxembourg. We also negotiated with the European Commission to become the headquarter of the European supercomputer in Luxembourg, because we wanted to make sure that the startups that they have the infrastructure they need in order to do their research. So now they will be free to use this supercomputer in Luxembourg. Of course, it needs a promotional campaign as well. You have to make sure that people know that you exist, especially if you're a small country then like Luxembourg. You have to make sure. So we did quite a lot of trade missions abroad where we presented Luxembourg, where we had pitches about what we could offer to them. But then, of course, and I think that's really an important thing as a government, you need to be fully committed. You need to show this sector that you are really serious about what you're doing and that you really believe in it and take action. And that's actually the reason why when I decided to launch this new activities, when I decided to launch this activity, that I went to government and I told them that I would need 200 million euros in order to get started with this new sector. And they asked me, what for? And I said, I don't know yet, but I need some money in order to get this developed. I need some money in order to invest also into some of these companies to show them that we're serious about what we are saying. And so I got this money, and we did several investments in space startups, in space companies. Okay, one in planetary resources was not the best decision, even though that at that time everybody was talking positively about this company and its future. But there we lost some 12-13 million euros because the company didn't exist anymore at the end. So they have problems. But that's what you should know. What you have to know, if you develop something completely new, that it will be, it will not be normal that all of the companies will succeed. Then when we put all this in place, it became quite clear that we, and one of the speakers just said it before, is that we need actually a space agency. We did not have a space agency. We were like Switzerland, also always depending on the European Space Agency. But we wanted to create a space agency, but not kind of ESA or NASA, because we didn't want to, put money into research for, outer space research whatsoever. But the main aim of this space agency actually is to help startups find their way, to help them put up their business in Luxembourg, to help them finding investors, etc. So that was a bold move when we started this 2 years ago. And they are really successful because they have, they have to hire staff all the time because it's overwhelming to see how many companies are interested in doing business from Luxembourg, or at least incorporating with Luxembourg or with Luxembourgish companies. And then, Raphael just spoke about that. Venture capital is really important, and you need venture capital funds. But when we try to attract venture capital funds dedicated to, especially dedicated to space, it was quite complicated because it's quite risky investments, and was difficult to convince investors to put money into such a fund. So then we took the decision as a government to do kind of public-private partnership. And we invested half of the amount of a venture capital fund called Orbital Ventures, which was recently launched. And that fund is now investing into into space companies. What it needs as well, of course, when you're talking about research and when you're talking about developing a new sector, then you need the brains. You need to either attract people to your country, or you need your university giving this kind of education. And that's when last year in September we launched a 2-year interdisciplinary space masters program, and we have also a space law program, and that's quite interesting, because quite a lot of people from all over the world, by the way, were interested in doing these studies in Luxembourg. So that helps us actually to develop the workforce we will need in the future. Yeah, okay. So I see that my time is over. What I want to say, because that's quite important to me as well, we launched ASRIC a few days ago. That's the Space Research and Innovation Center together with ESA, which is extremely important to us. But also we signed quite a lot of cooperation agreements with countries like Japan, China, UAE, Czech Republic, Portugal, Poland, Belgium, and others. UAE, by the way, because Gaetan was asking about that, I'm in the advisory board, and actually they have the same aim in order to develop business, because they see that petrol will not be their future anymore, and they try to develop new interesting economic sectors, and that's what they're doing. So, and then last but not least, maybe which was important to me as well, is that we will not get into a situation as a country where we will commit the same mistakes in space than we did 250 years ago when we started industrialization of our world. So we also want to become a competence hub for space ethics, and we're working quite a lot on that in order to develop standards which should be adapted maybe one day by the United Nations in order to make clear what you can do in space and what you should not do. So as a conclusion, I think that all of these recipes, all of what we put in place during the last 4 years is a real success story, because we have now quite a lot of companies already who settled down, hundreds of jobs which were created in this sector. I know that my team told me that they have more than 100 companies still in the waiting line in order to try to work together with Luxembourg. But as I said, as a government, you really need to be fully committed in order to be successful in this. Okay, so my time is over, as I see. So I just, I'm not in government anymore, but I know that my government and my successor is open for any kind of cooperation with any kind of companies and with any kind of countries, of course. To you all, to the participants at this conference and at the competition, I wish you all the best of luck and have an interesting conference. Thank you very much.